The twin suns of Varian burned above the royal arena, turning the sand into glowing gold. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, shouting and cheering as metal horns blasted through the air. Today was not an ordinary battle. Today, a human was going to die in front of the entire kingdom. His name was Riven Heil. He walked into the arena with chains around his wrists and ankles. The heat pressed against his skin, and the alien crowd stared at him with disgust, curiosity, and hunger for blood. They had never seen a human fight in their royal arena before. To them, humans were weak, small, and unworthy of honor. Riven kept his face calm. He had survived worse on distant planets, but he did not know the laws here or why they captured him. All he knew was one thing. He wanted to live. Up in the royal balcony sat Princess Serica, the heir to the Varian throne. Her long blue hair cascaded behind her armor. Her golden eyes glowed with power. On both sides of her stood her 5 royal maids, trained since birth to serve and protect her. Behind them stood the greatest warrior of the kingdom, the royal champion. The champion was twice the size of a normal alien. His armor was carved from beast bones. His axe was so heavy that even 3 soldiers could not lift it together. He was undefeated for 20 years. He had broken every challenger who stepped into the arena. Serica felt no fear for the champion. But she felt something else when she looked at the human below. Confusion. Double quotes. Why does he look so calm? She whispered. Her headmate answered softly. He knows he will die. Some accept fate quietly. But Serica wasn't convinced. Something in the human's eyes didn't match the fear she expected. His stare was sharp, cold, focused like a hunter planning his next move. A deep horn echoed. The arena announcer floated into the sky with a crystal orb, by royal decree. His voice boomed. Today, the human filth shall face the champion of Varian. The crowd screamed in excitement. Riven stood still. He had no weapon, no armor, only his fists and his will to survive. The champion stepped into the arena, shaking the ground with each step. His axe scraped across the sand, leaving a long scar behind. He pointed the blade at Riven and laughed a deep, monstrous sound. Human. He growled, I will end you with one strike. Riven didn't speak. He only raised his hand slightly, shifting into a stance. The crowd burst into laughter, thinking he was pretending to be brave. Up in the balcony, Serica frowned. The human. He moves like a trained fighter. The gong sounded. The fight began. The champion charged forward with terrifying speed for his size. The ground trembled. The crowd rose to their feet in excitement. The champion lifted his axe high, ready to crush Riven like a bug. Riven waited. He didn't panic. He didn't run. He observed. When the champion's axe reached the highest point, Riven suddenly moved. His body exploded into motion, fast, sharp, deadly. The crowd gasped. Even Serica stood up. Riven slid beneath the axe swing, the blade missing him by inches. Sand burst into the air. Before the champion could recover, Riven kicked his knee, forcing the giant to stumble. The arena fell silent for a moment. No one had ever dodged the champion's opening strike. The champion roared and swung again. Riven jumped sideways. The axe hit the sand so hard the ground cracked. Serica grabbed the railing, her eyes wide. How is a human moving like this? She whispered. Riven saw the mistake. The champion's arms were too slow when recovering from a heavy strike. Riven dashed forward and leapt onto the champion's forearm, running up his arm like a soldier scaling a wall. The crowd screamed in disbelief. The champion tried to shake him off, but Riven was too fast. He grabbed the champion's horned helmet with both hands, pulled himself up, and slammed his elbow onto the alien's throat. The champion coughed and staggered, but Riven wasn't done. In one smooth movement, he grabbed the champion's fallen axe handle, used his own momentum, and twisted his body. The impossible happened in the blink of an eye. Riven split the champion in half. With his own axe, the arena went dead silent. Thousands froze. Sirika's mouth opened in shock. Her maids stood completely still, unable to breathe. The champion's massive body crashed into the sand, split cleanly from shoulder to waist. Blood spilled across the arena floor. Riven let the axe fall. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He looked around at the stunned crowd. He did not celebrate. He did not shout. He only whispered to himself, "I just want to go home." But the arena announcer dropped his crystal orb. Scholars in the royal balcony began whispering rapidly. Sirika's face became pale, because ancient law stated, whoever kills the royal champion becomes the rightful master of the princess and her royal maids. Sirika stared down at Riven with fear, disbelief, and something else. A feeling she didn't understand yet, and this was only the beginning. The arena was still silent long after the champion's body stopped moving. The sand lay stained in dark red lines, like the ground itself was confused about what had just happened. Thousands of alien spectators stared without breathing. Even the birds circling above seemed frozen in the sky. Only one person moved, Riven. Holly, the human who had done the impossible. He wiped the sweat from his brow, looking around as if expecting someone to attack him again. But the attack never came. No one moved, no one blinked. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. Up in the royal balcony, Princess Sirika felt her heart beating wildly. Not from fear nor from anger, but from an emotion she could not name. She had known her champion since she was a child. He trained her, protected her, carried her on his shoulders when she was young. And now, a human had killed him like slicing fruit. Sirika's hands trembled, her golden eyes fixed on the human below. This should be impossible," she whispered. Her chief maid Lisa leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "It is not only impossible, it is dangerous. The law, princess, the ancient law." Sirika's stomach tightened. She already knew what Lisa meant. Every royal child had been taught it, the law of divine bond, long ago. Their gods had decreed, if the royal champion is killed in battle, the killer becomes the new bound master of the royal bloodline and all who serve it. It was a sacred law. An unbroken law. A law older than any living soul. Sirika swallowed hard. No, not him. He doesn't even know our customs. But the law didn't care what the human knew. In the center of the balcony, the royal archivist, an old alien with long crystal horns, opened the ancient scroll. His hands trembled. His voice cracked as he read the lines aloud. By divine decree, the slayer of the champion becomes the rightful holder of the conclave bond. Princess Sirika and her 5 designated maids shall be bound to him in loyalty, service, and companionship. The word companionship echoed through the balcony like a thunderbolt. Sirika's breath caught in her throat. Her maids looked at each other in shock. Below in the arena, Riven frowned. He could feel hundreds of eyes staring at him with a strange mix of fear and worship. "What?" he muttered. "Why is everyone looking at me like that?" The announcer descended slowly, holding his crystal orb as if it might explode. "Human warrior," he said, voice shaking. "You must come with us, immediately." Riven raised an eyebrow. "Am I free?" The announcer blinked. "Free? You? You are the new master." Riven stared at him. "The new what?" But the announcer didn't answer. Instead, dozens of guards rushed from the tunnels, not to attack Riven, but to kneel around him with their heads bowed. The crowd gasped. They had never bowed to a human before. From the balcony, Sirika felt heat rise in her chest. The idea of kneeling to this stranger, this warrior she barely knew, made her feel weak and dizzy. She hated the law at that moment, but she also respected it. A princess has no right to break divine decree. The archivist turned to her, bowing. Deeply, Your Highness. You must prepare for the binding ritual. The human must be taken to the palace. Serica closed her eyes for a moment, fighting her own heartbeat. Everything inside her was rebelling. Serve a human? Share chambers with him? Submit to the law meant for ancient times? No, but she could not say no. Bring him, she finally whispered. Her voice cracked just slightly. The guards guided Riven out of the arena tunnels. As he walked beneath the balcony, he looked up, and his eyes met Serica's for the first time. Something electric passed between them. Serica's breath stopped. Riven's steps slowed. For a brief moment, the world around them felt silent again. Then, Serica looked away sharply, embarrassed by her own reaction. Riven muttered to the nearest guard, "What is going on? Why am I being taken to the palace?" The guard swallowed nervously. "Because you killed the champion. I was defending myself." "That does not matter. It should matter." "No law has ever cared about what should," the guard whispered. The palace gates opened as they approached. Giant doors carved with shimmering runes pulled back, revealing tall marble stairs and glowing lanterns. Riven felt a strange pressure in the air, like the palace itself was judging him. Inside, Princess Serica and her maids waited. Serica stood straight, trying to hide her shaking hands. Her eyes held a mix of fear, anger, and something else, curiosity she wished she didn't have. When Riven entered, everyone in the hall dropped to their knees. Except Serica. The archivist lifted the scroll again. As ancient law commands, Princess Serica and her royal maids must now swear loyalty, obedience, and companionship to their new master. The words hit Serica like a blade, but the moment she opened her mouth to speak, Riven stepped forward. His voice was sharp, strong, and clear. "I'm not here to own anyone." Every alien in the hall gasped. Serica's eyes widened. Lisa covered her mouth in shock. Never in history, never in 10,000 years, had a bound master refused the bond. The archivist trembled. "Human, you do not understand. You cannot refuse." Riven clenched his fists. "Watch me." Serica's heart pounded. For the first time, she didn't feel fear or duty. She felt something far more dangerous. The palace hallways were carved from glowing white stone, each wall filled with swirling patterns that moved like living light. Every step Riven took echoed through the quiet corridors. Behind him, guards marched with tense faces. Ahead of him, Princess Serica walked slowly, her long blue hair brushing the floor like flowing water. Riven still didn't know whether he was being escorted or being taken prisoner again. He watched Serica from behind. Even the back of her looked royal. Straight shoulders, calm posture, a confident walk, but he could see she was nervous. Her fingers kept tightening around the golden sash at her waist, even though she tried hard to hide it. Her maids followed closely. Lisa, Mayra, Ellen, Sora, and Vila. 5 elite royal attendants. 5 women raised to serve only their princess. Now bound to him by law. But Riven didn't want that. He never asked for it. He only wanted answers. When they reached the inner palace, the guards stopped at the massive twin doors. The doors opened by themselves, reacting to Serica's presence. A gentle glow rolled across the room as the princess led them inside. Riven stepped in and froze. This was not just a room. It was an entire world inside the palace. The ceiling was a dome made of crystal glass. A night sky shimmered above, filled with purple galaxies and swirling star clouds. The floor was covered with soft silver grass that glowed faintly. A waterfall flowed down one wall, the water floating upward into orbs that drifted like tiny moons. It was beautiful, alive, and unreal. The royal chambers. Serica said softly, "This is where you will stay." Riven blinked. "Stay? Why?" "I told them, I don't want to be a master." Serica turned slowly to face him. Her golden eyes were calm, but her voice was careful. "You may refuse the title, human, But you cannot refuse the law. Riven stepped closer. I killed your champion because he tried to kill me. I didn't come here to take your freedom. Sarika looked away. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Freedom is not something the royal bloodline has ever known. The sentence hit Riven harder than he expected. He had seen slaves on alien worlds. He had seen war prisoners, soldiers, poor miners, but a princess? Living without freedom? Before he could respond, the maids walked forward respectfully and bowed. Lysa, the chief maid, spoke first. Her voice was polite, but her eyes were sharp, human. Whatever your feelings, the ritual preparations must begin. Riven frowned. Preparations? Sora stepped forward with a small silver case. We must record your life mark. Owen added, we must measure your energy signature. Vela held a golden collar with ancient symbols glowing on it. She whispered, and this. Riven stared at the collar. No. Sarika's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to refuse so abruptly. Lysa nodded slowly. You may refuse with your mouth, but your bond is sealed in blood law. The collar will activate by itself before dawn. Riven clenched his jaw. So I'm supposed to wear that, against my will? Mira's voice trembled. It is not painful, it is simply tradition. Riven laughed once, a cold, bitter sound. Tradition. Doesn't mean justice. The maids exchanged confused looks. No alien had ever questioned the law. No one had dared, but Riven wasn't from their world. He didn't fear their gods. He didn't fear their rules. He didn't fear their throne. His fear had burned away years ago. Sarika stepped closer, her face inches from his. You do not understand, she said quietly. The law binds us to you. If you reject the bond, the gods will punish me, not you. Riven stared at her. Punish you? Why? Sarika's throat tightened. Because I did not obey fate. Riven looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't lying, and she wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for her maids. Afraid for her people. That made Riven go silent. The room suddenly felt smaller. The glowing ceiling dimmed slightly. Riven turned his gaze to the collar again. In the metal reflection, he saw his own face, a man tired of running, tired of fighting. Tired of being trapped. Then he looked at Sarika. She wasn't guilty. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't the enemy. She was just trapped in her own life. Riven let out a slow breath. I'm not putting that collar on, he said gently. But I won't let anything happen to you either. Sarika's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not with disrespect, but with care. Lysa cleared her throat. Princess, we must begin the first vow. Sarika hesitated. Riven noticed it immediately. She didn't want to say the vow. She was scared to break it. Scared to speak it. He stepped forward again. Sarika, he said quietly, tell me the truth. What do you want? Sarika's breath caught. For the first time in her life, someone asked her what she wanted, not what the throne demanded, not what the law commanded, not what the gods expected. Just her. Sarika looked at him with a trembling gaze. I want to be free, she whispered. The entire chamber froze. Every maid stiffened in shock. Saying those words aloud was forbidden, but Sarika had said it anyway, and somehow she felt safe saying it to a human. Riven nodded once, gently. Then, we find a way. Lysa stepped back, stunned. Mira dropped the silver case. Vela covered her mouth. Sarika's heart hammered in her chest. For the first time in her life, for the first time in anyone's memory, the royal princess felt something impossible. Hope. Because of a human. And this was only the beginning of the bond that would change the whole kingdom. Night fell over the palace slowly, like a dark veil spreading across the glowing halls. The royal chambers is dimmed to a soft purple, the floating light orbs drifting like calm moons. But there was nothing calm inside Sarika's heart. She stood near the waterfall wall, the soft mist brushing her skin. Her maids formed a half-circle behind her, waiting tensely. And in the center of the chamber stood Riven, arms crossed, jaw clenched, staring at the golden collar lying on the pedestal. The collar pulsed with ancient symbols, reacting to the presence of a new master. It glowed brighter when Riven looked at it. Sirika's stomach twisted. The bond was awakening. Lysa stepped forward. Princess, the first binding vow must begin before midnight. If we delay, divine backlash could strike. Sirika didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on Riven. He was pacing slowly, studying the collar, the maids, the princess, the room, trying to understand a world that refused to explain itself. He finally spoke, voice low. So let me get this straight. If I don't put that thing on, the gods punish you? Sirika nodded. And my maids, and possibly the entire court. Riven exhaled sharply. That's insane, Ellen whispered. It is tradition. Riven pointed at the collar. This is not tradition. This is slavery with pretty words. The maids flinched. No one had ever spoken this way inside the royal chamber. Sirika stepped forward slowly. Riven, I know our customs seem cruel to you, but breaking a divine law is not like breaking a rule. It destroys balance. It brings storms, sickness, misfortune. Riven cut her off. Then the gods need to grow up. Vila gasped. Lysa froze. Mira nearly dropped to her knees in shock. Sirika's lips parted, not in anger, but in disbelief. No one had ever insulted the gods inside the palace. The walls were said to hear, the throne was said to watch. But Riven didn't fear any of it. He didn't fear them. He didn't fear the throne. He didn't fear the gods. He only feared losing himself. Riven stepped closer to Sirika. Not aggressively, just enough that his presence filled her senses. She felt something strange. Not fear, not shame, not duty. Something human. Sirika, he said softly, you told me you want freedom. Her breath caught. She remembered saying those forbidden words earlier. Words no princess should ever say. Now, hearing him repeat them, made her chest tighten. Yes, she whispered. But wanting does not change law. Riven shook his head. Maybe it should. Sirika looked away, struggling. The maids shifted uncomfortably. Lisa cleared her throat. Human. The vow requires your hand on the collar. The bond will complete instantly. Princess Sirika and we 5 maids will receive the mark. It cannot be undone. Riven stared at her with cold disbelief. You say that like it's normal. It is normal, Myra whispered. For us. Riven laughed bitterly. Then normal is broken. The waterfall behind Sirika shimmered. The crystal dome above them glowed brighter, sensing the rising tension. Sirika stepped closer. The distance between her and Riven was barely a hand's width now. Listen to me, she said quietly. If the bond does not complete, I will be punished. Not you. Not your world. Me, my body, my spirit, and my maids. Riven's jaw tightened. The idea of innocent people suffering because of him made anger burn inside his chest, but still. I don't own people, he repeated firmly. I won't wear that collar. I won't be your master. The words were a shockwave. Even the walls seemed to react, the glowing lines flickering like startled eyes. Sirika whispered, no one has ever refused it, then I'll be the first. Her heart pounded painfully, because a part of her deep inside admired him for refusing, for fighting, for standing alone against an entire culture. But another part of her feared the consequences. A soft chime echoed across the chamber. The collar began to float, glowing violently. Lysa gasped. It has sensed his rejection. It is awakening by force. The air trembled. The symbols flared. Wind rushed across the chamber. Riven instinctively pulled Sirika behind him as the collar shot into the air and aimed directly for his neck. He grabbed it. Mid-flight, Pain burned through his palm, but he held it still. Serica gasped. "Riven, let it go. It will injure you." He gritted his teeth. "I don't care." The maids watched with wide, terrified eyes. No one, no alien, no warrior, no noble, had ever tried to physically stop the divine collar, but Riven wasn't like anyone. They'd met. His hand shook violently as the collar tried to fuse onto him. He squeezed harder, forcing it away from his throat. A deep rumble echoed across the palace. The gods were awakening. A shockwave burst from the collar, knocking everyone back. Serica stumbled, but Riven caught her before she fell. Their bodies collided, her hands gripping his arms, her breath trembling. For a moment, there was no law, no gods, no throne, no duty. Just her and him, pressed close in a storm of ancient magic. The collar dropped to the ground, dimmed. Shaking weakly, Riven gently released Serica, still holding her arms to steady her. His voice was soft but unbreakable. "I won't let magic or laws control your life. I won't let anyone hurt you because of me. If the gods want to fight, they can get in line." Serica stared at him, wide-eyed. A human, someone her people saw as weak, had just challenged the oldest law in their universe. Not for power, not for himself, but for her. For the first time in her life, Princess Serica realized this human was more dangerous than any champion, because he had a free heart, and free hearts are weapons the gods cannot control. Night deepened around the palace. The twin moons rose high, glowing over the marble towers of Varian like cold eyes watching every secret. The royal chambers were quiet, but the rest of the palace was not. While Serica and Riven struggled inside their glowing dome of magic, the High Council gathered in the hidden throne chamber beneath the palace. 13 figures in black robes surrounded a round table made of living crystal. Their faces were half covered with bone masks. Their voices echoed like whispers inside a grave. At the center of the table floated a projection. Riven Hale, human warrior, standing defiantly with the divine collar crushed in his grip. The counselors stared in horror. "He resisted the divine bond," one whispered. "No alien has ever done that. Not even our strongest," another added. The head of the council, Lord Vyros, leaned forward. His single golden horn glowed with cold authority. "This human must die." The room trembled at his words. Counselor Rena hissed, "But he is now, bound to the princess by law. Killing him could bring divine consequences." Vyros laughed quietly. "Not if the gods believe he died in an accident." A few counselors nodded. Others looked nervous. Rena tapped the table. "Princess Serica has not completed the bond. The gods will notice if he dies. Then we kill him before the bond completes," Vyros said. "While the law is still fragile." A dark silence filled the room. Vyros continued, "We cannot allow a human to hold power over our royal line. The people will panic. The nobles will riot. This is not just about law, this is about survival." Counselor Sira whispered, "And what of the princess? She is showing sympathy toward him." Vyros's eyes narrowed. "Then she is a threat too," Rena gasped. "You dare speak against royal blood?" "Royal blood means nothing if the gods place a human above it," Vyros snapped. "We must protect the kingdom, even if the princess must disappear." A heavier silence fell. Not a single counselor spoke against him. Meanwhile, in the royal chambers, Serica sat near the glowing pool, watching Riven wrap cloth around his burned hand. The collar's magic had scorched him badly, but he did not complain. Her maid silently tended the wounds, dabbing a cool salve, cleaning the burns, bringing him water. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. The air still felt charged with the divine energy that had erupted earlier. Riven finally broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" Serica looked down. "The collar will try again at dawn, stronger." Riven shook his head. "Let it. I'll fight it again. Her heart tightened. Painfully. She hated that she cared. The maids exchanged whispers. He challenges laws like it means nothing. Is he mad or heroic? Maybe both. Serica looked at him, her voice gentle. Riven, why fight so hard? You did not know me. You do not know my people. Riven stared into the shimmering pool. I've seen too many worlds where people suffer because of old rules. I won't let it happen here. Not to you, not because of me. Those simple words hit Serica harder than any magic. No alien warrior had ever spoken for her, not even her champion. Not even her own father. She felt warmth in her chest, a warmth. She tried desperately to push away, but it stayed. Yes, she whispered. But the council will not allow this. Riven looked up sharply. Council? Serica hesitated. They control the throne behind the throne. They interpret divine law, and they fear change. Riven immediately understood. They'll try to kill me. Serica did not blink. Yes. The maids bowed their heads, confirming her words. And they will not stop at you, Lysa said quietly. If they believe the princess supports you, they will target her as well. Riven stiffened. Because of me? No, Lysa said bitterly. Because you threaten their power. Serica added, and because I did not immediately obey the vow. Riven's fists clenched. His burned hand throbbed, but he didn't care. He stood. Let them come. Serica gasped. You do not understand. These people do not fight honorably. They use poison, illusions, forbidden magic. Riven cracked his knuckles, the human fire returning to his eyes. I've survived worse. Serica stepped closer, worry tightening her voice. Riven. They are planning tonight. Right now. The council does not wait. They never give second chances. If they decide to eliminate someone, it happens before sunrise. Riven's voice dropped into a cold, steady tone. Then I'll be ready before sunrise. Vela whispered. You'll face assassins. Dozens, maybe more. Riven smirked. Good. Saves me the trouble of finding them. Serica's heart pounded painfully. This human was insane. Reckless. Impossible. And yet, she felt her fear turning into something different. A fierce, burning trust she didn't want to admit. She grabbed his wrist suddenly. Riven, promise me one thing. His eyes softened a little. What? Do not fight alone. Let us stand. With you. He looked at her, at the maids behind her, at the glowing chamber around them, fragile, beautiful, worth protecting. He nodded slowly. Then we fight together. Serica exhaled shakily. Her maids straightened with new determination. None of them knew that deep beneath the palace, Lord Vyros was already preparing a troop of assassins trained in the art of killing quietly, gifted with forbidden shadow magic, and sworn to eliminate Riven before dawn. No matter how many royal lives had to fall with him, the palace slept under the twin moons. But Princess Serica could not rest. She stood at her balcony, staring out at the endless city lights of Varian. Each street shimmered like a river of stars. But tonight, every glow felt dangerous. She could feel the council moving, the same way animals feel a storm before it arrives. Behind her, the maids whispered nervously. Lisa was arranging weapons, small hidden blades, crystal darts, and light armor robes. Mira was creating a map of the palace shadows. Vela prepared sealing charms. Sora and Ellen guarded the entrance. Their movements were sharp, terrified, and desperate, because tonight, assassins were coming, and they would kill anyone who stood in their way, even the princess. Riven prepares the impossible. Riven stood in the center of the royal chambers, sharpening the champion's fallen axe. The massive weapon still dripped a faint glow from the divine energy that clung to it. He could feel the building tension, the pressure in the air, the unnatural stillness. He had been hunted before. He knew what it felt like when death was drawing near, but this time was different. This time he wasn't alone. Serica stepped behind him silently. Her voice was low and soft. They will not wait until dawn. They will strike when the moons overlap. Riven paused. When is that? Serica took a shaky breath. Minutes. He turned to face her. Then you and your maids stay behind me. Her reaction was immediate, a spark of anger. No. She whispered. I will not hide behind you. Riven blinked. She stepped closer, the blue glow of the chamber reflecting in her golden eyes. You think I fear death? She said quietly. I fear losing everything I never had the courage to claim. Her voice broke slightly. I do not want to be a silent princess anymore, Riven. I want to choose my own fate. Riven stared at her, realizing something deep and dangerous. Serica was not afraid because she was weak. She was afraid because she had hope for the first time in her life. And hope makes people braver than anything. The shadow strike begins. The floor vibrated softly. Riven's eyes narrowed. They're here. A sudden gust extinguished half the floating light orbs. The chamber darkened instantly. The waterfall froze mid-fall time, slowing under Forbidden's magic. The maids gasped. Lysis whispered, shadow silencers. Only the council uses them. Riven lifted the axe. His voice dropped into a deadly calm. Stay behind me, Serica said firmly. We stand with you. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. The walls shimmered. The air distorted. Figures stepped out of the darkness, cloaked assassins wearing bone masks, their bodies half fading in and out of the shadows. There were 12 of them. Riven Holly, one hissed. The council commands your execution. Riven gripped the axe tighter. They can come do it themselves. The assassin laughed. Your death will be clean, quick, no need for drama. Serica stepped forward, furious. By whose authority do you threaten the royal chambers? The assassin bowed mockingly. By the authority of survival. Princes, you have grown inconvenient. Riven felt his blood boil. You lay a hand on her, and I'll tear you in half like your champion. Serica's heart jumped. She didn't expect him to say that. The assassins moved. The battle breaks the palace silence. They attacked with blinding speed, shadow blades, poison needles, dark smoke that ate the light around it. But Riven moved faster. He spun the champion's axe, deflecting the first strike and shattering a shadow dagger with raw force. The shockwave knocked 2 assassins back. The maids rushed into formation, Sora slashing with crystal blades, Mira throwing light bombs, Vela casting defensive barriers. Serica raised her hands. A glowing sigil formed above her palm, ancient. Royal spirit magic, forbidden outside of war. Riven noticed. You can fight? Serica's voice shook. You never asked. Then she unleashed a blast of golden force energy, sending 3 assassins flying across the chamber. Riven smirked. You're full of surprises. You brought them out, she whispered. Riven faces the elite assassin. One assassin, larger and darker than the rest, stepped forward. His mask was carved from a single black fang. The others fell back. Serica gasped. No, not him. He was trained to kill kings. Riven rolled his shoulders. Lucky I'm not a king. The assassin blurred, vanishing and reappearing behind Riven in one heartbeat. But Riven spun and blocked the strike, sparks exploding from the collision. The assassin kicked him back. Riven slid across the floor, then charged, swinging the massive axe. The clash shook the entire chamber. Serica screamed his name. Riven roared back, pushing with all his strength. The assassin hissed. Humans break easily. Riven smirked. Try harder. With a sudden twist, Riven turned the assassin's own momentum against him and shattered his mask with a brutal headbutt. The assassin collapsed. The final threat. The remaining assassins hesitated. Serica stepped beside Riven, her hand brushing his burned one. You protected me, she whispered. Riven looked at her. We protect each other. Her maids gathered behind them, bruised but standing strong. The assassins realized something dangerous. The human, the princess, her maids equals a united force the council had never seen. They retreated into the shadows, vanishing one by one, but before disappearing completely, one assassin spoke. "This is not over. The council will come themselves next, and your bond will doom you both." Riven raised the axe. "Let them try." Serica touched his arm. "No, we cannot face the council alone." He turned to her. "Then what do we do?" She swallowed. "For the first time in history, the princess and her maids must break the law to save the kingdom." Riven nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "I like impossible missions." Serica's heart thudded, because she knew something had changed tonight. Not just in the palace, not just in the kingdom, but in her. The assassins were gone, but their threat hung in the air like the cold edge of a blade. The royal chambers lay half-damaged, cracked crystal, dimmed lights, floating orbs flickering weakly. The waterfall had finally started flowing again, dripping softly into the pool. Riven stood in the center of the destruction, chest rising with heavy breaths. Sweat mixed with dust on his skin. The champion's axe rested on his shoulder. His burned hand still trembled. Princess Serica stepped toward him slowly, her feet brushing against shattered crystal. Her maids followed behind her, bruised and exhausted but alive, for the first time in her life. Serica felt safe in the middle of chaos, safe because of him. Silence. Before the storm, Riven leaned the axe against the wall and wiped the blood from his lip. He didn't ask if the women were okay. He could see they were. Instead, he asked the question none of them wanted to answer. "When is the council coming?" Lysa swallowed. "Soon. They will not wait long after failing tonight." Vila whispered. Nervously, "They will come with full force, not assassins, but generals, war priests, lawkeepers." Riven cracked his neck. "Good, I'll take them all." Mira looked at him with wide eyes. "You will die," Riven shrugged. "Maybe, but I won't let them touch her." Serica's breath caught. She wasn't used to someone speaking for her without wanting power, title, or obedience in return. She stepped closer. "You protected me tonight," she said softly. Riven shook his head. "You protected me too." Their eyes met, golden and human brown, and something in the air shifted, like the room itself was quietly listening. An unbreakable moment. The maids looked at each other, but they did not interrupt. They understood something had changed. Something ancient, something forbidden. Serica took a slow breath. "Riven, all my life I followed rules, traditions, God's laws, but none of them ever asked what I wanted." Riven's voice softened. "And what do you want?" Serica took one more step, close enough that Riven could feel her breath. "I want freedom." She paused. "I want my own choice." Riven held her gaze. "Then choose." Serica's throat tightened. Her voice shook. "I choose you." The maids gasped. The lights brightened. The waterfall glowed, not because of magic, not because of divine law, but because Serica had spoken a vow. By her own will, something more powerful than any ritual. Riven stepped closer. "You don't owe me anything." Serica shook her head. "You didn't bind me with a collar, you freed me from one." For the first time in her life, her heart felt light. The divine reaction suddenly. The collar on the floor began glowing violently. The chamber shook. The dome flickered. A deep rumble echoed through the palace. The gods had awakened. The collar rose into the air, again symbols burning, ancient energy spilling out like golden fire. The maids stumbled back. Lisa cried out, "It sensed the vow." The princess's heart choice triggered the divine bond. Riven stepped in front of Serica instantly, his arm shielding her. "Stay behind me." Serica grabbed his hand. "No, together." The collar hovered above them. And then something impossible happened. Instead of latching onto Riven, it split open like a flower. Golden energy flowed outward. wrapping around Serica and her maids like a warm veil. But instead of forming a chain, the energy fractured. Break. Crack, shatter, a deafening sound echoed. The divine law was breaking. Lysa fell to her knees, staring in disbelief. This is impossible. No bond has ever shattered. Vela whispered, shaking. The gods are not punishing. They are watching. The golden energy wrapped around Serica's wrist and turned into a soft, glowing mark, a symbol of choice, not ownership. The maids each received a smaller mark, shimmering gently. Riven received nothing. The energy faded. The collar broke into dust. The royal chambers went silent. Serica stared at her glowing wrist, speechless. The law. It changed, she whispered. It rewrote itself. Riven exhaled. Good. I didn't want it anyway. A new force the council cannot control. Lysa suddenly looked toward the palace doors, fear tightening her face. They will come now. The council felt that. They felt the law break. Riven grabbed his axe. Let them. Serica stepped beside him. We are no longer bound by their rules. Ellen added, voice trembling but fierce. And neither are we. If the law has changed, we have changed. The maids stood in a line behind their princess and the human who defied gods. For the first time, they were not servants, not concubines, not bound. They were free women standing together. The new bond. Serica gently touched Riven's burned hand. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Riven nodded. Together. Mera whispered, what do we call this new bond? Serica smiled softly. It is not master and servant, not princess and warrior, not fate and law. She stepped even closer to Riven. It is a bond of choice. Riven met her eyes, and nobody, gods or council, will take that from us. Serica's heart pounded. Her maids watched with quiet smiles. The collar's dust floated around them, like golden snow. And somewhere deep in the palace, the council felt fear for the first time, because a human and a princess had done the one thing they could never control. They chose each other, and that kind of bond is stronger than any law.